All right, guys, let's get started here. I'll let everybody know one last time that we're starting, and then we'll get going here. And if you have tickers you want me to look at, just let me know, and we'll go over that. And yeah, okay. So I'm gonna pretty much just go over the indexes and then a couple higher time frame stocks I'm looking at, but mainly I'm just going to be focused on the indexes this week and watching what's going on with the indexes, how they've been trading, things of that nature. And so few things that I'm paying attention to here is first, you can see that we had a moving average cross here. So this is the S&P 500, same as SPY. It's the futures. I typically like to watch those more than I like to watch anything else. So I am more paying attention to the futures charts because they run 24 hours. They give more data. They're usually faster in terms of trade setups and so on and so forth. So with that being said, weekly time frame, you can see first we have this EMA cross. Let me clear this off real quick. We have EMA cross here on the weekly time frame. And one thing to note is that we have not got that on the weekly time frame for SPY. So that's kind of interesting, right? So that's number one. Number two, we have a squeeze here. And then you can also see that the momentum is headed down. So honestly, this is kind of ready for a short, in my opinion, to get short the indexes. It might be jumping the gun a little early, but honestly, you can kind of see like how this works. So for example, here we had EMA's cross negative, and so this is the 8 and 21. And what we kind of saw or see here is a lot of times it'll break the EMAs, they'll cross, it retests, and then makes its move. Break, retest, but then it didn't work that time. But here, break, retest, and then kind of makes this move after that. So that's something that I'm kind of paying attention to, right? So I think that's important to keep in mind that that might be what might happen in the coming weeks. So we did kind of get our retest here. So I am paying attention to that. And I'm pretty interested in the short side of the market for the next few weeks. So that's kind of my view in terms of longer term perspective. And we're going to be going over, so these watch list classes, I'm going to try and structure them to have a few more things that are important. We're going to be covering the dollar and the VIX a lot more in these classes because I think they're pretty essential, especially the dollar, just because the market, so goes the dollar, so goes the market, right? So like the market likes to use, if the dollar's moving higher, we're typically moving lower and vice versa. So we always want to be paying attention to the dollar. So like, for example, something that might be like kind of practical for you. So let me throw this on there real quick for you. Let's go to this here. Okay. And then we're going to go the weekly time frame for this as well. And we can throw candles on here and we'll go look at the dollar. So DXY. Okay, so you can kind of get a good view of what happened. So notice how the cursor matches up with what's going on here. So I can kind of walk you through it, right? So notice we had this nice push up in the dollar, and then we were also pushing up on the major indexes, and then we started to get kind of toppy, right? So we got a top, and then once we really started to break out upside, when the dollar started breaking upside, you can see the market kind of fell subsequently, right? So we had this strong breakout. We had a weekly squeeze on the dollar. And once we had that, it kind of fired off, gave us this huge move upside. And then notice what happened on with the stock market, right? The S&P 500. And then you can see dollar was not going lower, wasn't going lower. And then it kind of started a little bit of a downtrend here. So you can see we crossed over. I'll fix this so it makes it more simple for you guys to see it. So take that 34 off. We take a look here. Okay, so you can see EMA is kind of crossed over, and then notice how the market started to kind of create higher highs and higher lows here. Once the dollar started to pull off, and then we kind of started making lower highs and lower lows, right? So basically, a lot of the times the dollar will move first, and then the market will kind of follow it after. So we want to pay attention to what the dollar is doing. So as you can see, so notice here, when the dollar started to break out, see how we had this trend line here, but not only that, we had the EMAs cross over and then cross bullish, and then we had a weekly squeeze fire off on the dollar. Notice kind of what happened with the market as a result of that, right? So once we put in this bottom here, notice how it was like 2 weeks before the bottom or the top in the market. Once we had that top, and then we started pushing up further and kind of having a really strong dollar, and notice what happened after that. What was the reason for the dollar? So the dollar likes to move. It typically, the way I like to say it, so goes the dollar, so goes the market. So the dollar typically likes to lead the market because obviously it's the biggest pricing mechanism in all of the world, right? So if the dollar increases in value, it means that the dollar is more valuable, which means that it costs more to buy things. It kind of correlates with inflation, right? So that's the reason we need to pay attention to the dollar, what the dollar is doing, how it's trading. Because a lot of times you'll notice before, like on Thursday and Friday, when we had those big drops, we had a really strong dollar and the market wasn't necessarily setting up yet. And then once kind of, I guess the way you would say it, the market caught wind that the dollar was pushing higher, we kind of dumped in the markets. And we can see that did CPI, honestly, I don't think it had, I think it was more along the reasons of the dollar, honestly. That's why we kind of dropped. The question was, did we drop because of CPI? I would say more so because of how the dollar reacted to CPI, right? So check this out. We had this nice push up, right? And notice that now you can see a really tight correlation when we look at the 4-hour time frame, right? So clear downtrend, and we got a clear uptrend on the indexes. Now notice when the dollar broke out, right? See how when the dollar broke out, we broke down and then flushed even further. And then ever since then, we've kind of been trailing down ever since the dollar has restarted this uptrend. So it was like in a downtrend, and then now it's kind of crossed over and now becoming an uptrend. But if you really want to look at this from a different perspective, all we did was set up we had a pullback to the 21 EMA or the mean. And then after that, we're kind of bounce off the 21. And now we might be setting up for another squeeze to the upside. So we have to pay attention to that. So like if this squeeze fires long here on the dollar, we can probably expect the squeeze on the S&P 500 to probably fire short, right? So that's kind of the way I'm looking at this. So whenever you're looking at like, oh, should I take a trade? right? Like if you're looking to play the long side, I would definitely recommend, okay, look at the dollar. Is the dollar strong right now? If it's not, if it's in a downtrend, okay, you're probably okay to play some calls, right? Dollar's in an uptrend and you're looking to play calls, more than likely, I would probably sit out and look to play puts when the time arises, like this, exactly what we saw here, where we had market looks great. Oh, market looks great. Everybody's in calls, right? And then as soon as the dollar pumped, we flushed. And then now we've been in a downtrend ever since. So that's kind of what I'm paying attention to. So you got to keep a close eye on the dollar and what the dollar's doing on an intraday basis, what it's doing overall. I would venture to say it's probably more important than watching the VIX. This is the ticker for the dollar, DXY. And I think on Thinkorswim, it's $ DXY. But yeah, I don't trade the dollar. I just know that the market really likes to move in tandem with it. Okay, so let's do a kind of a top-down approach of what the market looks like, right? So we've got this negative cross on the weekly time frame. We've kind of broke. We first, just looking at structure, we created a high and then a lower high and then broke that lower high. And now, more than likely, until the trend is broken, we just follow the trend that's new, the new trend that has been created, right? So we had a strong move up here, couldn't make a higher high, which is a sign of weakness, right? But it's not necessarily confirms a downtrend. But now that we had this move that made a lower low, now we can kind of see that we're probably starting to create a downtrend. Now this can be extra confirmation for us, and for those beginners, this is a pretty good confirmation, an 8 and 21 EMA cross. So that's number one. And then we back tested it, which is also a bearish sign. So we got to pay attention to all that good stuff, right? So histogram moving lower, we're gaining bearish momentum. So we got to pay attention to all those things. Honestly, my kind of thought is I kind of want to do a starter position. Once we get to, I got the alert right here. Once we get to this 4,400 area, I'm probably going to start a short position and just run a two ATR stop, size for 0, because if it does flush, we're going to, I'm expecting us to move back to 4,200 at the least. If this does decide to fire short, the squeeze fire short, then I think it's a pretty easy move back to 4,150 and then possibly 4,400, but that might be a little bit of a stretch. We'll see. So that's kind of my initial thought on the longer time frames. Okay, so let's go to the daily. Daily in a downtrend, right? So we're in a confirmed downtrend. You want to draw it out. If you're not good with structure, just draw it out. Create a higher high, broke that higher high. Now we kind of got sloppy here, right? And then now we've kind of created this downtrend that's a little more obvious. Now, what I've been noticing a lot in the market recently is a lot of times the market makers will like to create something that looks like an inverse head and shoulders, and then it ends up being nothing of the sort and ends up flushing and wipes all those people that were hoping they were calls out. So that's kind of my thought process there. So that's that. And then, so really all we're missing here for a perfect short position is momentum flipping to the short side, but we do have that on the 4-hour time frame. So we look at the 4-hour, you can see structure's kind of changed. Now look at the most recent structure, lower high, lower low, and now we might be creating another lower high to continue lower. Potentially, I'm thinking that I think if the weekly squeeze, like this longer time frame here, doesn't end up playing out to drop down to 4,200 and ends up reversing momentum to the upside, because we do know that the monthly time frame is still intact. We've got momentum going to the upside, and it has been for the past several months. So this is the higher time frame. So we got to take more weight on this. So it's very likely that this could just end up turning around and swinging momentum and kind of doing something like this here and reversing momentum from the downside to shifting to the upside and moving higher. But the shorts or the charts aren't showing us that yet. So we kind of got to lean on this time frame here that we may head lower based on the weekly time frame. And then so if we don't get that real flush that I'm talking about to 4,200, I'm expecting we at least go back test this 4,300 area. I'm thinking that's pretty like a very high probability setup, in my opinion. So I'm kind of paying attention to that, keeping an eye on that. Now, one other thing I'm looking at, like once we continue down to the lower time frames, I'm thinking that this 4-hour squeeze here can trigger us to the downside there. I'm thinking we have a gap here. So if we get to this area right around here where the EMAs are, I'll probably think about getting into a short position here and going short and looking for this to go back down to 4,300. So that's kind of my main setup I'm watching going into this week. Dollar strong, we got a little gap to fill just as of today, if we don't go fill that overnight. And I'm thinking we'll probably head back to 4,300 based on how the charts are looking now. So that's kind of my expectation for the market. And that's kind of what I'm watching. So, and that ultimately, what I'm thinking may happen is if that 4-hour does trigger, then this could send, so that could send this to 4,300. And if that 4-hour ends up triggering this daily time frame, that could trigger us back to this low and ultimately back to, well, either we hold this low or we'll go back to 4,200. And then we'll have to see from there whether this daily time frame fires that weekly squeeze. So that's kind of my expectation going into the next few weeks, right? One other thing to keep in mind is if we go here, the put call ratio still holding over 1. This could get much higher, but this does kind of deem a reversal coming at some point. So we do have to pay attention to this. I am expecting a larger time frame reversal, kind of in line with the monthly time frame for ES. So basically, the easiest way to put it, I'm short-term bearish, longer-term bullish. So I'm not expecting us to puke back down to this low here, not at all. But I am expecting a little more downside, just because we had a nice push up that wiped out shorts. Now people are probably in calls, so let's wipe out those people in calls as well. And I think getting to 4,300, maybe a little below there, maybe testing this low would do that. So really, my opinion, it's really what ends up being on the charts. And I'm just going to play whatever the charts tell me. And then we'll kind of see if that whole thesis plays out. But that's the thought process I have behind all this. So kind of a huge level for us to get over as of right now is this level right here, 44.18. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that. You can see it was support, turn to resistance a couple times. So yeah, keep an eye on all that. So short-term bearish, looking to more day trade this week and play the shorter time frames, play this squeeze, hopefully back to that 4,300. And then we'll see if that ends up triggering this daily time frame or it continues to reverse and gain momentum back to the upside. Now, a little wild card in here is you can see that the momentum has kind of shifted on the daily time frame for NQ, but I expect, so you can see the EMAs have crossed, we've got bullish momentum, but we're back below that. We closed below that 21 EMA on Friday. I'm expecting this to really follow whatever the S&P 500 does. So I'm not putting too much weight on NQ. So that's kind of my view going into this week. So we take a broader perspective on the dollar. We already talked about it a good bit, but basically we've got a daily squeeze here. We have a clear uptrend. I'm going to play this as it is because it is an uptrend. So I'm going to follow that until it's proven wrong. We still have a weekly squeeze in here. This has gone off 1, 2, 3, 4 bars. So I'm expecting two more bars or more of upside momentum before this losing it. It's usually you can expect 6 to 10 bars based off the squeeze, and so that's what I'm kind of looking at here. And then daily time frame, I think the continuation for the weekly time frame squeeze may continue from this daily time frame here. So if we can get some momentum to the upside for the dollar, we can expect this to kind of continue higher. So lower time frames, there's nothing too much to look at besides that we're in a clear downtrend, which was a pullback to the daily 21 EMA. And then as soon as we got there, we bounced off it. EMAs are crossed on the lower time frames, and now this is back in an uptrend. So you can kind of see here, we were creating lower highs and lower lows. And then ultimately we broke that higher low, higher high. Now I'm kind of expecting another higher high. So that's perspective for the dollar. VIX, we had a lot of, okay, so I did talk about this on Friday, that there was strong potential of this being a inverse head and shoulders here. And it ended up being a inverse head and shoulders. And so we did play that. Was able to catch a nice move on Friday and catch the downside on Friday. So what we caught was this here, this pullback up to here, down to here, which was about $4 move and SPY, which was really good. I was happy with that on Friday. So VIX, another squeeze, see if the momentum can flip upside. And we've got quite a lot of resistance right around this area right here. So we kind of want to pay attention to that. If we break, which really we can plot the $20 mark too, because that's probably the key area that everyone's paying attention to. And once we get over that, I mean, we've probably cleared the way back to 25 pretty easily. So with the strength it had on Friday, there's no reason to think it wouldn't continue. So really the perspective that you just got to take on trading is make it super simple. Like, okay, we had a really strong day on Friday. We're pushing up higher. We've kind of created a new uptrend. So unless this is a double top, this is probably going to continue higher. Okay. Same thing with the dollar. Very, very strong uptrend. So there's no reason to think that this is going to change. You're basically betting against the trend if you do. So if the dollar's trending higher, we got to think bearish on the equities, right? And then, so this same thing here, very clear, right? So what's probably the next move? Probably another move down, right? So then we'll kind of look for a move back to that 4,200, like I was saying. And that's probably a conservative target based on the way the charts look right now. So that's kind of my perspective on the market and kind of my view on things. We have a lot of key earnings that may set the tone this week. We've got bank earnings. I think JPM reported on Friday. I think it was pretty good based on how the market reacted to it. So that's good. I mean, it sold off immediately after the open and after the retail got in and headed upside and then sold back off. So, so I feel bad for anybody that bought it at 153. But hey, so now we've got Bank of America reporting. I believe we have Goldman Sachs. And then really the main heavy hitters that we want to pay attention to that will heavily influence the NASDAQ will be Netflix and Tesla. So I had a few people talking about Tesla in the chat, and I think this one really this one's kind of a wild card. I'm not going to play Tesla this week. I'm going to let it do its thing. It may chop into earnings, it may do whatever, but I'm not interested in playing it before earnings. Like, I think this squeeze will fire off as a result of earnings, and the earnings are pretty inconsistent. So you can see here we sold off after earnings. Here, well, we sold off again. Okay, here we gapped up big. Here we had a move, we gapped down, but bought right back up. Here we had a strong move up. So it's kind of like we're pretty much break even in terms of the last 5 earnings, right? There's nothing really, there's no consistency. But Netflix has done pretty poorly whenever we have earnings reports, right? So we had a gap down here, we had a gap down here, we had a gap up here. But the thing is to note that we had a earnings. So when we went into earnings, usually stocks like to have an earnings run up. And so we had a run up into earnings on this earnings. We had a run up into earnings on this earnings. We had a strong run up into earnings on this earnings. And notice nobody wanted to buy it up on the way to earnings this time. So that might be a telling tale of what might happen for Netflix this week. I'm not going to play it, but we got to pay attention to that because it's a key earnings report, and it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the earnings reports coming up. So that's kind of my overview. I'm going to be focused mainly on ES and trading that. And then besides that, that's really it for me. So do you guys have tickers that you want me to look at, stocks you want me to go over, things that you're looking at? You can put it in the chat and I can go over those. And if you have setups you want to look at going into this week, we can take a look at Apple. Apple's setup is bullish from here. So I don't really have anything to say about this one, right? Okay, so somebody said NVIDIA. So NVIDIA, I mean, everybody's been talking about this kind of diamond. I don't even know how to draw it, honestly. This here. Like you see it all over Twitter. Everybody's talking about this kind of thing here, which is called like a diamond, supposedly a diamond top. And when the dollar is strong, stocks usually, yep. So it's kind of an inverse correlation. So I don't know how they drew this, but whatever. So they said this was kind of a diamond top. I don't have any interest in playing that type of pattern. For this, we can look at like the 2-day, follow the trend until it's gone, right? And this has been one of the strongest stocks. So I wouldn't lean towards shorting it, but it doesn't have any good long setups. So personally, I wouldn't do anything here. All the momentum on the higher time frames are, besides the weekly, are pointing to the downside. So I don't like the 2-day, the 3-day. They're kind of pointing towards the downside. And you can also kind of see this may be a head and shoulders pattern here. So that's what I would kind of be paying attention to there. I don't love the setup. I don't really see anything that I would do with it. But honestly, in my opinion, like if I had to take a guess, you put a gun in my head and I had to guess, I'd say it's probably going back to 400. Okay, so someone said AMD. AMD, it could be trying to break out, but really it's going to do whatever the market ends up doing. So it tried to have a breakout of this trend line. It has a weekly squeeze. I think that it may continue lower. Like this might have been a fake out. I think it's going to do whatever the market ends up doing. And that kind of goes for everything, right? So that's kind of why I did my whole analysis and spent a majority of my time on SPY, because realistically, it's going to do most of these stocks, probably 90% of them are going to do whatever the market ends up doing. And so something that may help is for those who asked about NVIDIA and AMD, you can kind of look at SMH, which is the semiconductor ETF. So this is the sector that they're in. You can kind of see we're creating higher highs and higher lows. So I think that's probably going to continue for AMD. The downtrend is going to continue for AMD and NVIDIA as well. So, because you can see here, this is kind of creating a clear trend. AMD is a pretty clear downtrend. This might just be a fake out. And then NVIDIA, same thing. It's having trouble making a new high. Once it made or reached that $500 mark, I think that's going to be a really tough place for us to break out of. So I'm expecting probably to go back test 400 at least before we go try to take out 500 again. Disney. It could look good over this resistance here. It's starting to turn over. What I would do is, personally, because we came down to this support, I don't know. I wouldn't love going long this stock, really, because like you got to look at it from this perspective. Think about all the people that bought it up here. Think of all the people that bought it up here. Think of all the people that bought it right in this area here. So whenever the stock moves up to that area, it's going to have a lot of pressure of people like, oh, it's back where I bought in. Let's get out at break even. I didn't mean to. Wow. Anyways, so kind of perspective. So I'm getting off topic. So really my thought process is like, look at all the people. If you notice my drawing, this is a guy smoking a cigar or a joint if you want to go there. But basically, really what we're looking at is there's so much baggage here. There's so much baggage of people just buying stuff here or buying here and hoping they can get out at break even if it comes back up here. So it's a lot of baggage once you get pulled back up here. So if it moves up here, it's just got a ton, all of these people here, it's just baggage. So that's not the one you'd want to go long on, right? Because there's so much like you don't want to look at stocks that have a lot of baggage unless you're just looking for a quick pop, not something for that you want to be in for the long term. Okay, and then E. Okay, so same thing here. You could get like there's no real pattern to play besides it's same thing with Disney. Like look at Disney, it's right near its 52-week lows. This NNE, same thing. It's right near its 52-week lows, so I'd be more inclined to short it than go long. Just follow the trend. It sold off pretty hard, so it's pretty natural to have a bounce. I would expect it to continue lower, but it also has earnings, so I would just wait. And if you're really trying to, so I would lean bearish on this for sure. It's back where it was during COVID, but I don't see a setup to play. And there's also earnings coming up, but I'm bearish on this name based on the way the chart looks. So QQQ, I talked about this one already. I think it's going to follow whatever the market ends up doing, but you can see if the market kind of turns around to the upside, like if SPY starts to flip around or ES starts to flip around, then I'll think, okay, QQQ will head upside because QQQ technically has a bullish setup. You've got the EMA's cross positive, you've got a squeeze down here, and the momentum's headed to the upside. So technically you have a bullish setup, but the market does not have a bullish setup. So it's like, do I really want to get long NASDAQ when the ES doesn't look good? Not really. And especially ahead of all these earnings reports, big tech, Netflix and Tesla being big heavy hitters in QQQ, not really. I'd rather just follow what the market's doing and kind of focus on ES or SPY, if that makes sense. Limit. Okay, so you could play this one based on the news, but also look at this, same idea. There's a lot of baggage here. So it might have a hard time getting over this area. There's probably a lot of baggage. People that got in here and have been bag holding, and then now are going to try to sell out here. And really, if you look from a longer term perspective, same thing. A lot of baggage here. A lot of baggage up here. But like if you're looking to invest in this name, so there's a few things to look at here. First, there's this here. A lot of baggage of people holding from up here near the highs. So you've got people that are trying to get out of their positions out of break even. You also have a potential sell the news situation, right? So news came out, this gapped up. We've got earnings coming up in the next couple of days. So I would probably, if it was me, I would wait until after earnings, just to be safe. Now, if you're going to invest in this thing long term, if you look at the monthly chart, it's got a beautiful uptrend. So I wouldn't expect it to do anything else. But you can see over the past year, we've done nothing and just chopped. I think it's okay for like a long-term investment because of the steady uptrend that it has. And you can kind of see we're bouncing off that monthly trend line. But in terms of like trying to play some quick calls based off the news, I think that's risky business. Any other requests or are we good? I hope that helped for you guys. We good? Okay. All right, cool. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your night. I will see you guys for the markets tomorrow. We've got a couple cool new features. I'll tell you about it real quick for the signals chat in terms of like alerts and stuff. So me and Dark Knight, he helped me get this set up. Basically, there's a new feature we have that when we set alerts on our trading view, it's going to automatically ping you. So if we're not watching the charts, like I'm out of town or whatever, I'm traveling, not watching the charts, it will automatically ping you guys in the chat with a notification that there's a setup there. So like, for example, I have this one here. So if ES pulls up to this area here, it'll ping in my alert section or the BR game plan. It will say ES 4-hour bearish squeeze, potential play, can enter SPY put 7 days out with the 2 ATR stop loss. So it will just give you guys more trading opportunities. And I'll show you. So that will pull up and automatically post for you guys, and you can take that trade. It gives you a stop loss. It gives you the type of contract you should look at taking, and so on and so forth. So it's a cool new feature to help stuff be more automated and us not have to be like, okay, SPY put, blah, 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 alert, alert. It'll give you guys opportunities throughout the day. And whenever alerts go off on trades that we would take, but we may not be watching the charts or whatever to actually take it, it gives you the opportunity to do that. Similar story with the 4-hour on NQ. I have this set up. I'm actually going to delete it because we have this squeeze firing off already. But yeah, so we have that feature now offered to you guys in the signals chat. If you want to sign up, free trial, 7 days, and you get to see what we're about, and you don't have to pay anything. If you don't like it, cancel it before you pay. I don't care about that at all. I just want you to pay for something that you actually want, right? And we provide our best knowledge we can. So yeah. All right, guys. Thank you guys for coming. And I will see you guys for the markets tomorrow. Have a good rest of your night.